Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
Still lots to get to here on this Friday morning in your nation's capital, July 11th. It's 7-Eleven Day at 8:06. 7-Eleven Day can mean only one thing to anyone with a pulse, and that means a free freaking Slurpee, Patrice Onwuka.
Amen. Happy Friday and happy 7-Eleven Slurpee Day, I guess.
That's right. Sure, why not? It's also the weekend where yet another remake of the Superman story is opening. Hollywood, of course, they're addicted to a couple of things. They're addicted to superhero movies. They're addicted to remaking movies that have been made for the last several decades. What they don't seem addicted to is actually creating masculine male characters and stars to be able to embody those superhero movies. In fact, Mark Hemingway, who wrote about this at the Federalist this week, Hollywood's inability to create masculine stars is officially a problem. You point out opening your post here, Mark, your essay, something that I sort of recognized internally as I was going to the movies this year, but I didn't really it didn't resonate with me. The fact that the two biggest sort of action movies this year so far star Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, both great movies, by the way, and they're both pushing 60.
Yeah, they're not pushing 60; they're both over 60.
Jeez.
and they're not exceptions. I mean, like all of the big male talent in Hollywood, Matthew McConaughey, George Clooney, Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, on and on. Just go down the list. They're all over 50 at a minimum.
Yeah, and they're young
really
boomers
something.
or old Gen Xers, and that's weird. What happened in Hollywood?
It is really weird. If you'd gone back 25 years, and told people that this would be the case, I think people would be shocked. I mean, Tom Cruise was a bona fide star by the time he was 24. I mean, that's when Top Gun came out. It was also the year he starred in The Color of Money, a Martin Scorsese film with Paul Newman that cemented his reputation as an actor. So, it used to be we had this star-making machinery, and people are actually talking openly about this. It's pretty interesting. I mean, part of the problem is that Hollywood is now kind of dominated by female executives, and I'm not quite sure they understand what appeals to men about male actors, if that makes sense. Yeah. What in men appeals to women is different than what appeals to men. Like, when Larry and I were growing up, you had guys like Lee Marvin, Charles Bronson, Robert Mitchum, guys that weren't even necessarily classically handsome, but they just oozed masculinity, right?
Yeah.
And now you have definitely a bunch of more, feminized sort of pretty boys that are, up and coming actors. And, one thing about this is I found sort of fascinating, someone sent me an article actually after my article was published. I thought I would have included this, but about 10 years ago, New York Magazine did an article on why all the stars of all the superhero movies are foreigners. Henry Cavill, the last guy to play Superman, was English. Christian Bale played Batman, was Welsh. Liam Hemsworth, who plays Thor, is Australian. You just go on down the line, and with the exception of Chris Evans, who played Captain America, where they intentionally limited the casting to Americans, there's just huge number of foreigners, and they actually had quoting casting directors in New York Magazine, which is not exactly like a conservative magazine, saying, we're not seeing a lot of masculine men from America. They just don't exist. Or the alternate theory is that American education and everything is such that in England it's much more natural to be a rugby player who also acts. Whereas the masculine men in America get shuttered off into some different track where they don't go into acting.
So, Mark, to pick up on that thread, Captain America, the recent one, Brave New World, starred Anthony Mackie as Captain America, who also has this anti-American strain to him in his personal views. He's black, for those who didn't see the movie, but he got a lot of backlash, because of how he views America as racist or whatever he's been led to believe. Is that also part of it, where a lot of millennials and I guess Gen Zers actors out there, they also have this hatred for America. They believe that masculinity is toxic, and so they, you're also seeing kind of that other strain playing in as well. They just are not interested in positive male roles being a part of it. And maybe even part two of that question is, are there enough good positive roles for men where they're not just doofuses like, Family Guy's dad or Homer Simpson? It just seems like they make any strong male character a doofus.
Yeah, those are really good questions, and I wish I had good answers to them, but you're right. I mean, Chris Evans, who played Captain America before Anthony Mackie, is a very outspoken liberal. I mean, I do think there is something to the fact that, Hollywood, which is dominated by liberals, obviously, for them, traditional masculinity in terms of, a guy that's going to, use violence to achieve good ends, for instance, is coded as toxic masculinity. It's coded right wing. And they don't want any part of that anymore. And doesn't matter that, those kinds of stories of, heroism and, fighting the bad guys, really appeal to men in particular. And I think those men are kind of being being shut out of the box office. But yeah, you're right. I don't think that they're interested in those stories, and I do think that they're interested in male stars that are are left wing essentially, and so their heart really isn't in.
I was going to say, I have hope for Adam Driver. Adam Driver, I think, does come across as sort of a masculine star in the new Hollywood, although he's often cast as the heavy, as the bad guy, not as the heroic figure.
Right. Well, Adam Driver is a really interesting case because he served in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
He's about the only male star that I can think of that has any actual military experience. Whereas, again, you go back a generation or two and, how many of the major Hollywood stars, were World War II vets.
Yeah. They were all vets. Yeah.
They had, actual real experience with what being a, masculine man actually meant in its sort of fullest sense, not just, as action stars, but also what the repercussions of violence are and other things like that. And that sort of, weight in their portrayals, I think, really came across as actors.
So this latest Superman is sort of another example of this. And Hollywood will say, they seem to be setting, and you mentioned this in your article, they're stepping up this guy, Timothée Chalamet. He's the star of Dune, who, by the way, looks so feminine. He really does.
Right.
And I've been hearing his name floated as the next James Bond. Is that really what we're going to do? Because it's going to flop. It's just going to flop.
I have absolutely no idea. I haven't heard about Chalamet for Bond, although he's been such a hot actor for so long that it wouldn't surprise me if people are talking about him in that way. I mean, the thing is I think Chalamet is actually a very good actor. His portrayal of Bob Dylan recently I thought was really good, and I'm a Bob Dylan fan. But obviously, different actors have different personas and are best suited for different roles. And a guy like Timothée Chalamet should not be carrying major action films. I think it really only speaks to the fact that there's this just dearth of talented masculine actors out there that they would talk about someone like that for a role like James Bond.
Can I quickly just jump in here? Because I know that some people say, oh, it's a Superman movie, and I've given up on Hollywood, and I don't care about this, and Hollywood hates me, so what's the point of the conversation? This is important, isn't it, Mark? I mean, this isn't just about good movies. This actually has to do with defining men's roles in our culture, and those movies and those characters that you mentioned you and I grew up with, it had a lasting impact on our generation, and the next generations need those male figures beyond just their fathers and their grandfathers, but these cultural symbols in our pop culture really do make a difference in how American men view themselves and their role in our society.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that is a really important point. I'm not one for identity politics, but when you're talking about a group that represents, roughly half the population, maybe you should provide some more positive portrayals of what those people are about. And further, we need mention that this is not just a thing that's unique to Hollywood. There's been an open conversation for the last several years here about how the heterosexual male novelist has basically disappeared. Yeah. I mean, go to Barnes and Noble and look at the new release in in the literature section, and it's almost all women and men with, hyphenated names and things like that. I don't understand, like what happened, even 20 or 30 years ago, there was a lot of strong, sort of typically male perspective novelists that were, revered as literary stars. So, yeah, this is a really a culture-wide problem.
We got to leave it there. Mark Hemingway, as always, a very thoughtful column
conversation
at the Federalist, and I appreciate you approaching these topics that are somewhat off the beaten path. It's refreshing. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
I'm always glad to be on WMAL.
Ah, very nice. Well, but specifically O'Connor and Company.
Yes.
Thank you. When I have to ask for it, it's not as good. It's 8:16.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
This weekend will mark the one-year anniversary of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. As we spoke earlier with Tom Fitton in the program, it's stunning, remarkable, and frankly a scandal that there's so little we know about this would-be assassin. Mr. Crooks, 20 years old. I saw Jasmine Crockett the other day in an interview saying, these attempted assassination, these assassination attempts on Donald Trump, the assassins were MAGA. They were MAGA. That's the line they're writing. Yes. Jasmine Crockett in her interview the other day is trying to sell the story that the person who tried to put a bullet in Donald Trump's head in Butler, Pennsylvania a year ago this weekend is MAGA. Because a true MAGA Donald Trump supporter wants to murder him, apparently.
What information is she privy to that we aren't, or what, the investigators behind this?
This is the problem.
What does she know?
When there's a dearth of information and a stunning, scandalous lack of curiosity from our media outlets, personified by the corporate broadcasting cable networks and major newspapers, then you get a well-placed Democrat politician saying something like that, and suddenly it'll become true.
And there's no pushback to it.
Right.
There's no one to say, no, this guy isn't MAGA. He's a maniac, but he's not MAGA.
There are people to this day who don't know that Lee Harvey Oswald was a communist and defected to the Soviet Union. They think that he was a right-wing Republican who hated John Kennedy. That's what happens.
That's the narrative.
So that's one part of the scandal about this, the fact that we don't have information. Second part is that the media doesn't seem to care. The third part, of course, has to do with the Secret Service and what happened there in this breakdown of all the candidates for president for the last several decades. The one you would think who would need the most protection from a violent act would be Donald Trump, the guy who half of the country has called a fascist, a Hitler, and if he wins the election, will end elections as we know it in this country. And yet somehow everything went wrong that day in Butler, Pennsylvania. As we've already reported earlier this week, there have been suspensions now of 6 Secret Service agents to the tune of 10 up to 42 days without pay. No one loses their job. Susan Crabtree, who is a very well-sourced reporter at Real Clear Politics, specifically with regard to her sources at the Secret Service, she has more information here. As she puts it, the real story behind the 6 Secret Service suspensions. Key supervisors who signed off on the Butler security plan and 2 who were in the final walkthroughs before the J13 rally were never disciplined, but instead received promotions, according to multiple sources. One of those supervisors on the final walkthroughs, Nick Menster, was assigned this year as the number 2 in charge of the Laura and Eric Trump protective detail. This is the same person who did the final walkthrough and approved the security setup that led to the assassination attempt of Eric's father, the president.
This is it's asinine that you're going to reward these Secret Service agents for failing to do their jobs, and but for the grace of God that President Trump turned his face to look at a screen, we would not have a President Trump in office, and yet they get rewarded for this. Can I just read here, Larry? Matt Quinn, Secret Service Deputy Director, this is what he says: "We are laser focused on fixing the root cause of the problem." Whenever you hear somebody talk about root causes as an excuse for why they're not actually doing their job, it's because it is an excuse for not actually doing their job. And he goes on to say, we aren't going to fire our way out of this. No, actually, yes. People need to be fired, including you, sir.
Yeah, the Washington Post has a profile, and I do want to give some credit to the Washington Post here, I suppose, a profile on a gentleman named Aaron Zappaloni, a 46-year-old Army combat veteran who was there that day, and he fired what was called the ninth shot. He's the one who stopped the would-be assassin. It's a great article. It's a great story and a profile on him. He was the sniper, the counter sniper, who ended up putting that bullet in the shooter's head 115 yards away. If he had not done that, the assassin would have continued firing, and Lord knows what other mayhem could have happened. So thank God he was there that day. And again, the Secret Service is trying to say, yeah, we've done our suspensions, case closed. Enough with the case closed stuff, guys. And keeping information. Until we know who this assassin was, what his motives were, what we know about him, we should know every single thing that the federal government knows about this person. That's how these things work. It's 8:23.
All right, coming up, we've got some immigration news. You won't believe what some of these federal judges are up to, even after being slapped down by the Supreme Court. Plus, a clown at the Washington Post has quite an interesting take. We'll share it with you. Stay with us. It's O'Connor and Company at 8:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:36. O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here. Let's see what we do every day. Coming up in 30 minutes, we're going to hand it off to Chris Plant because, he's Chris Plant.
Of course.
That's Patrice Onwuka.
And it's a Friday, Larry. Oh, it's a Friday.
Yes, it is. I'm Larry O'Connor, and we have an update on several rulings here with regard to immigration and the Trump administration attempting to enforce immigration law, and a handful of judges that continue to get in their way. Every time any issue that has come up with the Trump administration exercising their executive authority over enforcing the law of the land, if it makes its way to the Supreme Court, the Trump administration has won the day.
Yes.
And yet we still have these federal judges that continue to try to thwart the will of the American people and overstep their position in the Constitution. Let's start with New Hampshire. Yesterday, a judge made a ruling on birthright citizenship. The New Hampshire judge has paused Trump's order on birthright citizenship. We sort of expected this to happen, I suppose, but this comes off the Supreme Court's decision that, in fact, these nationwide temporary injunctions, specifically on issues like birthright citizenship and whether it will continue to be honored, are invalid. But now, ultimately, the Supreme Court is going to have to rule on the actual merits of this case. So perhaps this pause by this New Hampshire judge will move that along even faster. It does need to be determined whether the 14th and 15th Amendment have been misinterpreted all these years by previous administrations, and that just because you are born in this country to two people who are non-citizens in the country illegally and have allegiances to foreign lands, does that in fact make you automatically de facto an American citizen? That needs to be determined, especially since it's been exploited for so many years by illegal aliens who are trying to get a foothold in this country.
And what makes this this ruling by this federal judge in New Hampshire a little bit different, which is that, last week we know the Supreme Court said that district judges can't generally issue nationwide universal injunctions, but they didn't rule out that couldn't happen if it was done through a class action. And this case is a class action case brought by some different illegal immigrants. Lawsuit was filed on behalf of a pregnant woman who's two parents and with infants, pretty much anchor baby situation. So this is a class action suit. So again, the idea is for this to get punted back up to the Supreme Court, which will hopefully say, even class action suits cannot stop what's being intended here.
previous administrations have always made a lot of noise about wanting to get to the root causes of illegal immigration. And their solution for the root causes is to constantly give money to corrupt governments in Latin America who end up wasting it and not doing anything with it. But the idea is, oh, well, if we only propped up these third world nations, then nobody would want to come here to America. Yeah, which is
not how it works.
ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Some root causes are, number one, businesses are hiring people illegally in this country, and the Trump administration needs to really crack down.
Crack down on it. Thank you, Larry. I thought I was the only person who was gets frustrated that we're turning a blind eye to these employers who knowingly are welcoming illegal immigrants into their workforce. It's wrong.
It is a scandal that Republicans stand in the way of E-Verify. It is a scandal that Republicans do not spend as much time robustly enforcing the law by fining and even prosecuting employers who willingly exploit this cheap labor for their own greedy purposes. That needs to be done. There's another root cause, though, and it's probably even a bigger root cause than coming here for employment, illegal employment, and that is the safety net that the American people, through their charity, their Christian fortitude, and their goodwill, have created for people who are impoverished in this nation. We have created a welfare state with free benefits, free education, free food, free health care, free everything if you fall below the poverty line. And so people who come to this country illegally and are below that poverty line, they have been getting all of those benefits that are paid for by American citizens and taxpayers, and these benefits were designed originally just for U.S. citizens, but there has been this creep that has occurred through left-wing politicians at the state level and the federal level who have now opened up all of these programs to anyone who comes here, even if they come here illegally. And the Trump administration is trying to crack down on that. The Department of Education has now revoked a decision that the Clinton administration made, allowing illegal immigrants to access taxpayer funds for technical schools, career schools, and also for Head Start programs. Again, programs that are just supposed to be for U.S. citizens. And so the Trump administration is attempting to do that same thing, trying to roll those back, including Head Start, tuition dual enrollment, adult education, and career and technical education programs. Look for a judge to try to block that, though.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, what's interesting here is if you're here illegally, the left has always told us, oh no, they don't have access to our social safety net. They're not getting benefits. But they're fighting so hard to ensure that any changes to stop illegal immigrants from accessing these benefits, Medicaid to food stamps, why are they fighting any efforts to stop that from happening if after all these years they have said, oh no, it's not happening at all?
That's right. Health and Human Services, by the way, under Secretary Kennedy, are also attempting to ban illegal immigrants from accessing benefits. They announced yesterday that HHS, up until now, again, going back to the Clinton era, interpreted the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 96 to let illegal immigrants use certain federal public benefits. HHS has now announced that it has formally rescinded that interpretation that began under Bill Clinton. Kennedy said, for too long, the government has diverted hardworking Americans' tax dollars to incentivize illegal immigration. Today's action changes that. So the bottom line here is, if you want to get to the root causes of illegal immigration, stop having that carrot. Stop having all of those things that attract people to come and break our laws and stay here. All of the federal benefits and state level benefits that are being handed to them with money that has been taken from our back pockets through tax dollars, number one. And number two, enforce the law against businesses who hire these people illegally. That's right.
Yes.
And not only you do that, and we could. By the way, we could tear down the wall at the southern border. We won't have to worry about people coming into the country illegally because there's no reason for them to come to the country illegally.
Well, and it also deals with those who are living here illegally who have a reason to stay. So suddenly, if you can't get access to all these benefits, and you can't work illegally under the table, then maybe it's going to look more appetizing to return back home, and the self-deportation effort may see an increase in support there too.
All right. Coming up in a moment, the Washington Post, where democracy dies in darkness. Well, you can change that motto to send in the clowns. We'll explain in a moment. It's 8:44.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Washington Post has found a new way, Patrice Onwuka, of going after Donald Trump. I kid you not. This is the headline in the opinion section. I'm a clown. Donald Trump is not one of us. Real clowns bring joy to the world, not chaos to Washington.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Michael. That was really well timed.
Donald Trump is not a clown. I should know. This is from Tim Cunningham, board president of Clowns Without Borders, a nonprofit that performs clown shows for communities facing hardship.
Wait, is this like their form of Babylon Bee? They're launching their own comedy corner?
This is real.
Really?
This is 1,000% real.
Oh, wow.
This is.
I'm still laughing. This is just silly.
It actually doesn't even stand up to self-parody at this point. I think they take themselves so seriously that they think this is a very important piece.
Clowns demand years, if not a lifetime of study. This guy, I mean, yes, he calls Charlie Chaplin, Mr. Bean, Buster Keaton, all clowns. Were they clowns or were they comics?
Well, I mean, they were. No,
because
they
really?
used physical comedy, and it was silent films, and no, I'll give it that. No, here's the tipping point. This is what the real funny thing is. Here's the opening paragraph. Allegations that President Donald Trump is a clownish figure are not hard to come by. Political strategist James Carville referred to Trump's administration as the clown show. And Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC called the president a humiliated clown. So because all of these crazy left-wing maniacs call Trump a clown, an actual clown had to step forward and say, hey, we're clowns. He's not a clown.
Okay, so you're getting at it. He says here, clown is used by almost everyone to belittle those seen as foolish or incompetent. The more we mistreat the word, the more we lose understanding of a sacred art form. So is he advocating for the word clown to be elevated to the N-word?
I suppose it's clown, a slur to say clown. It's not fair to clowns. He is a clown, and he demands to be taken seriously. It's 8:52.